All right. My name is Heather Johnson. I'm one of the recruiters here with ALTIA Central. And today we're going to be talking about living and working in Japan, the role of an ALT, and my company, ALTIA Central, or our company, ALTIA Central. So let's get started. Now, everybody has kind of their own reasons for wanting to live and work in Japan, whether that be your interest sparked from anime and manga, um, cosplay, or maybe Japanese traditional culture like tea ceremony, the food, etc. Everybody has their own journey to and through Japan. But I hope that everyone here today is somewhat interested in teaching English in Japan. Now, there are a few different ways that you can teach English in Japan. There is Eikaiwa, which is kind of a conversational school or after school kind of academy or language or language institute. And in general, this would be afternoon into evening hours. You would be working with toddlers to adults and kind of everything in between of there. There's also kindergarten or international schools where you would be the sole teacher taking care of a classroom of children. There is business English where you would be working with adults or university students. And there is being a university teacher, again, a sole teacher in a university classroom. And then finally, there's being an assistant language teacher. Now, before we talk about what the role of an ALT is like, I'd like to start before that and actually talk about the visa that is required for an assistant language teacher. So, because an assistant language teacher does work with public schools, immigration does require you to have an instructor's visa. And immigration has certain qualifications and requirements that have to be met in order for you to obtain an instructor visa to be an ALT. So those two requirements include a bachelor's degree. It doesn't have to be in any certain field. It can be English, it can be computer science, as long as you have the bachelor's degree. And then another requirement is uh, coming from a native English speaking country, or if you're not from an English speaking country, having 12 years of education that was conducted in English. So this doesn't mean having 12 years of English classes, but having 12 years of education, all of the subjects, math, PE, music, etc., those were all taught in English. So whenever, if you're not from a native English speaking country, when you are applying to us, make sure that you do include those documents or certificates that do say that you have 12 years of education conducted in English, because this will help us understand that we will be able to help you in the future, because you will be able to meet immigration's qualifications and requirements so that you can be an ALT. So please lead with that if you do apply with us. So in general, an ALT works with elementary school and junior high, and ALTIA Central primarily works with elementary school and junior high. We also sometimes work with kindergarten. That might be once or twice a month, once a week at most. And we also have mixed positions where you might work with kindergarten and elementary, or elementary and junior high, or maybe a mix of all three of those levels. Now, an ALT, I would say that we do a lot for a school, but starting with the students, we provide an opportunity for students to use that English that they've been learning in the classroom. And we do this by having conversations with students, getting to know them a little bit. And of course, that happens inside of the classroom, but more often it happens outside of the classroom during a normal school day. And we definitely encourage our ALTs to be a part of that school community. So, joining into events like sports day and graduation, festivals, clubs, cleaning time, and everything in between of that. When we give students these opportunities to use English, it does help them improve those communication skills. And as it stands, they don't have a lot of opportunities to use English, and especially not with someone from a different country. While we are learning about our students, they are learning about us. And so that's also when we share our own cultures. And we also want to share other countries' cultures so they get even more of this idea of the outside world. Now, on the flip side of that, this is more of an assistant support type of role. So it is more about understanding the teacher's needs and expectations, their goals for the year. So some of the things you might do as an ALT is lesson planning with teachers, suggesting activities for the next class, echoing the teachers in English in the classroom, modeling a conversation with them from the textbook, and everything in between of that. It's all about being flexible and available to help out whenever or wherever possible. Now, in general, for junior high school, the Japanese teacher of English, or JTE, will be the lead in English class. For elementary school, it can kind of depend. Some elementary school teachers are the lead in English class, and then some elementary school teachers may ask you to be the lead in the classroom. And this is okay. We do prepare you for that in some of our training. But I would also say, if you are in that situation, I would use encouragement to try to get them involved a little bit more, involved in lesson planning with you or in the classroom with you. So, in general, that is the role of an ALT. So let's look at a schedule of what being an ALT during the week might look like. Now, on average, our ALTs work with 3 to 5 schools. Now, that doesn't mean that you'll be working with multiple schools in one day. That means it will be spread out between a week or even a month. So let's look at what a weekly schedule might look like, just as an example. So let's say you had 3 schools, A, B, and C. Um, it might look like Monday, Wednesday is school A, Tuesday, Thursday is school B, and maybe Friday is school C. But let's go a little bit in depth and look at what a daily schedule might look like. Now, for an ALT, we like to say that the hours are somewhere between 8 to 5. Every prefecture is a little bit different in terms of how the BOE would like to set the working hours, but so are some of the areas within that prefecture. So it's always going to be somewhere between 8 to 5. It might be 8:30 to 4:30. It might be 8 to 4. And it could even be 8:30 to 5. It just kind of depends on that area. But in general, school usually starts, or students usually come in at about 8 o'clock. And this is a great time to greet students, kind of say good morning and hello to them, get them a little warmed up to English, I think. First period normally starts, or the first class of the day normally starts at about 8:45. And for elementary school, um, classes are 45 minutes, and for junior high school, classes are 50 minutes. And for elementary school, there is normally a 5-minute break in between classes, and for junior high school, there is a 10-minute break. Um, so after those first two periods or classes, for elementary school, there is a recess or playtime. That's about 20 minutes. And this kind of gives the kids or the students time to run around and, get all that energy out, so that they can focus on the next two classes that they might have, which is third and fourth period. Now, for junior high school, there is no recess or playtime in between third and second and third period. So after second period, it will go right into third period. So third and fourth period, this is when you'll start to smell kyushoku or school lunch. And fourth period, usually when you might greet the students at the beginning of class and say, "How are you?" You're going to hear a lot of "I'm hungry," and probably the ALT too is going to say, "I'm hungry." Um, so during lunchtime, this might be prepared by the school, or it might be prepared outside of school. But in general, depending on the school, you might be able to eat with the students and kind of rotate classes during the week. Or you might be eating with the teachers in the teacher's room to kind of connect with them, get to know them a little bit. I find that Kyushoku or school lunch is nutritious and delicious. So I really enjoy having school lunch. Now, if you have any preferences, like if you're vegetarian or if you have any um, religious specific foods that you can't have, you may want to bring your own lunches. And this includes if you have any allergies. Schools in general can't really deviate or accommodate changes. So you might want to think about or prepare yourself to bring your own lunch in those cases. But if that is the case, of course, you would be talking with one of our supervisors to go in depth for your options for that area. After school lunch in general for both junior high and elementary is playtime or recess. Again, this is usually about 20-25 minutes or so. So it's another great time to get to know your students a little bit, whether that be outside playing tag or maybe inside talking about your interests that you might have, common interests you might have with the students. After this, there is normally cleaning time. This is something that happens at every school across Japan. There are no janitors, so the students and the teachers come together to clean the school once a day, and this is usually about 10, maybe 15 minutes, depending on the school. After that, you have two more periods with it, which is fifth and sixth period. Now, while there is 6 classes in a day, that doesn't mean that you'll be teaching 6 classes every day. On average, ALTs will normally teach maybe 2 to 4 English classes during a day, maybe 5 or 6 if it's a really busy day. So that might give you 1 to 2 periods or class times that you can either meet with teachers to plan out the next lesson, or it'll give you time to prepare materials for the next lesson, or maybe it'll give you time to prepare materials for connecting with your students outside of class. After this, school normally does end about 3:30 or 4 o'clock, depending on that school's schedule. And again, this is a really great time to just say, goodbye to the students at the Ginkgo where they change their shoes out, and just end the day on a really positive note. Now, after this might give you about 30 minutes or an hour before you will be able to go home. And this is a good time to meet with the teachers and again, kind of talk about the next lesson or if you need to prepare anything for the next day. So that is what a daily schedule for an ALT might look like. Now let's talk about some of the key success to being an ALT. I like to say that there are the 3 A's to being a great ALT. First, I would say is adaptable. I definitely think that you need adaptability and flexibility because you will be working with multiple teachers. And so it is important to have that adaptability and flexibility to learn their different styles in the classroom. Um, Everybody's going to have their own way of kind of teaching English. So having that extra flexibility definitely helps. Not to mention that every student is going to be a little bit different as well. So trying to stay on top of it and thinking about different activities that might engage the majority of your class or might, might strike that one student in the classroom and get them really excited. But definitely flexibility and adaptability is something I think is important for ALTs for any changes that might happen suddenly. Approachable. Being approachable just means that the students and the teachers are comfortable with coming to you, talking with you, learning more about you. Um, of course, this is important for when you're meeting teachers, and it's important for the students so that they can improve their English communication with you. And then just being available. So being available, you'll want to be there for the teachers to talk about lesson planning, for being aware in the classroom, for helping them out as much as possible. And being available for the students, of course, you want to be available for them inside of the classroom, but kind of like I said before, we also want to be available for them outside of the classroom as well, so they get even more opportunities to talk with us, get to know us a little bit. All right. So let's talk about ALTIA Central. And I'd like to talk about where and how our interview process might begin. So first, of course, you'll want to apply either through our website or Gaijinpad or Jobs in Japan, or you can email our manager directly. And after we get your application, we will look at it. We'll look at your resume. And if it seems like your experiences, like we look at multiple things. We look at what kind of degree you might have, what experience that you might have with Japan, what experience you might have with the Japanese language, what experience you have with the children. We look at multiple things. And then if we think that ultimately that experience lines up with being an ALT, then we will reach out to you and we'll set up an interview. Now, all of our interviews are conducted online. And if you are a successful applicant, then we might ask you to do a demo lesson video. And this is just to get an idea of what what you might look like in a classroom. And we may even do a Japanese interview to understand your Japanese level. Now, us as a company, We work with 13 different prefectures from Shizuoka to Hiroshima. We operate in central Japan. Our four biggest presence prefectures are going to be Gifu, Aichi, Okayama, and Hiroshima prefectures. We do operate a little bit in Kansai, but I would say that our presence is very, very small there. And so if you are looking to live and work in the Kansai area specifically, then I would have to say I don't really know if we can help you out. But if you are open to surrounding areas or even those four bigger presence areas I mentioned earlier, then we can definitely keep an eye out for that. Now let's talk a little bit about the kinds of support and benefits that we offer through ALTIA Central. Now, I think one of the most prominent benefits that we offer is full salary every month. This is becoming increasingly rare in the ALT industry, but we do pay full salary every month, including the months where you may not work at all. So this would typically be in August during the summer break. Um, you may not be working at all in August, but we'll still give you the full salary. Now you may be asked to join a summer camp, which may be a couple of days, or it may even just be one day. And you may be asked to join a speech competition, which is generally one day or so during the summer vacation. But in general, after that, the whole of August is usually your time. For apartments, we can set up apartments for you. That is absolutely okay. We usually place our ALTs in Leo Palace apartments. They are designed for one person, but we do take care of the key money and the deposit, and we would just ask you to pick up the rent from there. If you have lived and worked in Japan before, you may know that key money and deposit is a pretty penny, and not all companies do cover that, but we certainly do. If you are looking for an apartment that is not a Leo Palace, or maybe you're looking for something specific or a little bigger, then I might suggest that you look into the option of finding your own apartment. In that case, you would have a little bit more freedom of what apartment, how big, and other specifics. But for company cars or driving positions, the majority of our positions are driving. We do have some non-driving positions in bigger areas, but in general, the majority of our positions are driving. So if you already have a Japanese driver's license, or if you are okay with getting a international driver's permit, that's great. You don't have to get your own car. We do have company cars, and we do have driving plans. With those driving plans, we will always take care of the lease and the maintenance of the car. So you will not have to worry about that. We also offer fantastic orientation and continued training as well. So we have initial training. It is a hybrid training. Um, Basically, you would be accepted to our online training website or portal, and you would have access to a lot of videos that you can check out that will not only adjust you to being an ALT, prepare you for school, but also prepare you for what it's like living and working in Japan. Um, like I said, it's hybrid. So we do have a 2-day in-person training. This is normally in Nagoya. Now during April, we do have another location that is set up because there are usually a lot of new ALTs that come on board with ALTIA Central for the new school year. But in general, it is in Nagoya. And the 2-day in-person training is to go over things that we can't do through videos, which is practicing doing a storyboard in front of a group, or practicing introducing a song to a classroom. And it's also a good chance to receive some advice and feedback from our trainers. Now, after about a month or so, or a couple of months of being in school, you might go to follow-up training, which is just to go over, what worked for your school, what didn't work, and what you could kind of improve on or try out at your school in your situation. And then every year, we have Professional Development Day. So this is for all of our ALTs every year. It's a chance to talk about the role of an ALT and where it might be going, if there's any changes to the curriculum, if there's a new textbook. But there's also other sessions that you can choose from to further your own growth. So that might be things like activities for special needs, or maximizing your time outside of the classroom, or how to effectively meet with your teachers. So things like this are what you can choose from during Professional Development Day. Now, on top of our training, we also have great resources for the classroom. So we've got just about everything you can name. We've got flashcards, we've got storyboards, we have CDs, we've got worksheets, we've got activity guides, we've got lesson planning guides, we've got guides for interacting with students outside of the classroom, and just about everything in between of that. So we definitely don't leave you on your own to create your own materials. We do try to give you all the tools necessary to be successful as an ALT. Now, on top of our training and our resources, we also have supervisors. And these supervisors, if you ever need any support or advice, you can, of course, call them, you can email them, and they try to come visit you maybe 2 to 3 times a year. Basically, they would go to one of your schools, they would see one of your lessons, and they would give you some feedback or advice. And they would also just check in with you if there's anything that you want to talk about or any advice that you might be looking for. And it doesn't just have to be about school. It can also just be about life in Japan in general. And this is something that I really appreciated when I was an ALT, so I definitely like to share that with everybody. Now, based on the things that we talked about today, our benefits, our support, our resources for the classroom, I think these all contribute to our positive reputation. And you don't have to trust me. I definitely encourage everyone in here to check out the comments on Glassdoor, check out Reddit, go to YouTube. Please go ahead and do your own research. I think that ALTIA Central is a really good company and does stand out above the rest. But please do your own research, of course. So that is just about all the information that I have. So I do want to open it up to everyone else. You can leave a question in the comments, or you can even unmute your mic and ask directly. And I'm very happy to give you any information or answer any questions you might have. This is a very good question. So, what I might suggest, if you are from a non-native English-speaking country, um, it, it comes down to those visa requirements that I mentioned earlier. So if you were adding something to your resume or your cover letter, um, I would mention if you have had 12 years of English education conducted in English, then I would add that in there. I would add that you've had 12 years of education conducted in English. And if you're sending an email, I would also add that, add any certificates or documents that you might have to show that as well. For some companies, what they might prefer as well is if you are from an if you are from a non-native English speaking country, they may want to see you already in Japan, with either a humanities visa or an instructor visa already. So if you're not having an easy time becoming an ALT with other companies, you may want to try a Kaiwa, what I had mentioned beforehand. Now, in general, Kaiwas, they operate in bigger cities, and you would probably get a humanities visa. The requirements are less strict. The instructor visa is more strict in terms of the rules and requirements that immigration has set. But that's probably what I would suggest is just relevant experience and showing that that the company that you're applying to, that they can help you out with an instructor visa or a humanities visa. Reference letters, in terms of applying to us directly, they are optional. You don't have to send reference letters in, but it can help sometimes. We do ask for reference information because we will contact your references a little later. And I think that the best references are, of course, going to be um, probably education related, or if you've had Japanese classes, a Japanese professor. For those that are overseas, probably a Japanese professor. If you've worked with children before, anybody that has seen you working with children would probably help as a reference. If you're already working in Japan, then probably a JT or HRT, which is a homeroom teacher and a Japanese teacher of English. Um, if if we can contact them, that is somebody that has directly seen you in the classroom, has seen your experience, has seen what you're like as an ALT. And those would probably be the best references. Now, not everybody, especially those overseas, not everybody has those kinds of experiences, or maybe you haven't worked with children before, and that's still okay. We can still contact those references. It just means that it won't be as relevant to it just won't be as relevant to the position of an ALT, if that makes sense. This depends. Are you overseas? If you are overseas, this is a great time to start interviewing with us. If you're overseas, we have to apply for a certificate of eligibility, which is then given to you so that you can process it into your passport. And then when you come over to Japan, it turns into a residence card or a working visa here in Japan. Now, it usually takes about a month for us to um, receive a certificate of eligibility after a company applies for it. And it takes another 1 to 2 weeks to get it processed in your passport. So anybody that we're hoping to bring over for March and April, we usually apply for those in December. And then COEs usually have 3 months before they expire, which is why we apply for them in December. If you are already in Japan, of course, we can still interview with you now, but probably the best time for an April start is to interview with us in January, maybe even February, probably December. If you're hoping for a January, February start, it is possible if you are already in Japan. During a year, we might have sudden openings that pop up. These are pretty rare for the latter part of a school year. It usually happens more commonly just before the summer vacation and during fall from September to December. But from January and February, we usually don't have a lot of openings that happen. But we do have our most availability for that April start time. So if you're overseas hoping to come over, go ahead and apply, interview with us. If you're already in Japan and you're hoping for January or February, you can definitely interview us. We might have something open, but it just depends on the sudden opening that might happen. We look at multiple things. So, of course, English education is going to be the most relevant for an ALT role, but working with children in general is still relevant. So, even if you're teaching a different subject, it does still help. And then it also helps if you have any type of um, experience or connection to Japan. So those things help as well. It is okay not to have a ton of language ability, Japanese language ability, if you have the experience working with children. Um, and uh, even for the Japanese interview, we do help you get started with a template for a self introduction. But if you have the experience working with children, if you have a connection to Japan, or if you're in Japan, that would definitely help. If you have some experience working with children, but maybe not a connection to Japan, maybe you don't know the language, it's going to be a little bit harder. So in that case, I would suggest trying to get experience in Japan. And there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can do this through Eikaiwa. It's a little bit easier to get into. But also there are TEFL or TESOL certifications and classes that are held within Japan that would give you a little bit of a leg up because it's still a certification for teaching English as a foreign language. But also it would give you that little bit of experience within Japan too. since you are on a dependent visa, there
Mhm.
is some restrictions for how long you can work and how much you can work.
Mhm.
Essentially, you can only work 28 hours, which is part time. So it would require you to change your visa for sure.
Mhm.
So it usually takes about a month to change a dependent visa to an instructor visa. So that can be a little bit longer. It's
Mhm.
about the same amount of time as a student visa, which is a non-working visa to a working visa.
Mhm.
But for us, dependent visas are perfectly fine.
Mhm.
It boils down to where you are at. Um, and if we have positions in those areas. If you are flexible to go to anywhere or outside of where you're living right now, then it might be a
Mhm.
little bit easier. But if you are looking for a specific city, a specific
The
area in
picture or
general,
something. Mhm.
it does get a little bit harder,
Mhm.
um, because we do have to have a position in that area for that to
True.
work out. So for the start of the new year, the new school year in April, that would be a little bit easier because that's when we have the most availability. That's when we start to understand what positions are going to be open when, because we do send out intentions forms to our ALTs to understand who will be moving on next year and who will be continuing another contract with us. So in general, dependent visas are okay, student visas are okay. It really comes down to how flexible you might be on placement. You can apply anytime with us. You don't have to wait for a specific time. You can definitely apply now. Now, I do want to ask, do you have, you said you're an ALT, so you do have an instructor's visa. So yeah, you can apply anytime with us. So for example, if you applied in October, you might be finished with our application process or our interview process as a whole in anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. But after that, we will start to understand the openings that are going to be available for April 2025 in February. So it will be a wait time. If you apply now and you're finished at the end of October, for example, there will be a few months where we won't know what positions are going to be available for April 2025. So as long as you are patient with us, um, and you do become an approved applicant with us, we can search for a position. And if there is a position that matches your preferences of where you might like to go, what levels you might like to work with, then we would reach out to you and at that point offer you the position. I want to thank everybody so much for coming out today. I am going to paste a link to a survey. Since this is our first time doing this kind of event, I just want to understand everybody's experiences. If you really enjoyed this event, if the information was relevant to you, what topics you liked the most, things like that. It should only take about 1 or 2 minutes. And if you could fill that out, I would really appreciate it, but I'm not going to pressure you. Thank you everybody again so much for coming today, and I hope to do this again in a couple of months. So everyone have a good night, okay? Or a good morning, depending on where you are.